Hello, you lovely Whovians, and welcome to another Doctor Who related video. If you can't tell from the incredibly garish background I've got behind me here. And as this day, we have heard the exciting news that Ncuti Gatwa is going to be taking over the mantle of the Doctor from Jodie Whittaker at the end of her run for the BBC centenary. It's high time that I did a video I've been meaning to do for ages, which is all about how I believe the Doctor should be played. Now, as with all these sorts of videos, it's completely opinion-based, completely subjective, and yeah, just take it as that. So don't sharpen your pitchforks, Whovians, just yet. This is completely my opinion, but I have a bit of a magic formula for how I believe the character of the Doctor should be played. And it comes from a book that conveniently I wrote just before the 50th anniversary. See if I can get it to actually work on here. Just about. Oh, maybe not. Called Doctor Who, A Companion, and an unofficial guide to 50 years of TV's most iconic show. And I wrote this basically to see if I could write a book back in 2013. So, and at the back of the book, I wrote a little bit of an article, which I'm going to read to you, Jackanory style, about how I believe the best way to play the character of the Doctor is. And I've put it basically into 3 different categories, and I believe that somewhere between those categories is the perfect way to play the Doctor. So let me introduce you to my categories that I came up with. Here we are, the closest thing I could get to a Venn diagram. I would say that the perfect portrayal of the Doctor comes somewhere between these 4 different strata. We have the authoritative adult, the inquisitive child, the eccentric alien, and a new one that I've added, the romantic human. And as I go through these, hopefully it'll start to make sense. But reading from the book itself, there is no other hero quite like the Doctor, the strange alien with a sense of morality who travels the realms of time and space to save people from oppression and invasion, using their intellect rather than their fists to right wrongs and save the day. Though they are so much to so many, they are ultimately alone, traveling the universe with an ever-changing companion and a time machine that they have little control over. The blueprint for the character of the Doctor was, of course, first laid down by the original writers, producers, and the inimitable William Hartnell. Where is he? There he is. Since then, all of the actors to play the Doctor have stretched their personality whilst retaining the core elements that make the Doctor such a fascinating character. They're both accessible and mysterious at the same time. The ultimate everyman or everywoman and ultimate alien in one role. I've tried to simplify the character of the Doctor into what I see as 3 distinct parts, or 4 here. The authoritative adult, the inquisitive child, the eccentric alien, and the romantic human. By understanding how each actor has utilized or restrained these individual elements, I'd argue we have a way of measuring their effectiveness at portraying the role and engaging the audience. This is because I believe these elements are aimed very cleverly at the different sections of the audience at home. The child, who is of course the main demographic the show is aimed at, their family, and the student fraternity that has helped make the show into such a cult as well as mainstream success, in the same way as other British television institutions such as Monty Python's Flying Circus. I will now look at the pros and cons of stretching each of these elements into creating a portrayal of the Doctor. And whilst I'm doing that, I'll try and put all the Doctors so far into how they fit between these. Firstly, we have the authoritative adult. The extremes of this element can be seen in the first Doctor, played by William Hartnell, of course. So let's see if we can actually stretch him up. There he is. You can tell I've not used Zoom for a while. And the third Doctor, of course. Let's put him next to him for now. And the 6th Doctor, played by Colin Baker. The ninth Doctor, Christopher Eccleston. And then I would also add, because obviously I wrote this in 2013, so we've had a few more Doctors since then. I would also add the War Doctor. I would add Peter Capaldi, of course. And I'd probably add Joe Martin's Fugitive Doctor as well. So we've got a fair few there in the authoritative adult category. The advantage of this element is the trust it gives us that the Doctor's intellect and wisdom will carry us through to a safe conclusion. This helps children to feel a certain security and belief in the Doctor. No matter what the odds, the authoritative Doctor will carry an unspoken control of the situation. If this element is taken too far, however, it can distance the Doctor from their audience, making them seem aloof and inaccessible, cold and dislikable. For me, the third and sixth Doctor often skated this line. This created some rather unsatisfactory scenes in which the Doctor would chastise their companion and become someone it was difficult to like. Stretching this too far is a crucial error in a television show where the Doctor is the one constant in an ever-changing world of monsters and other dangers. When this element threatened to damage the series, the producers would try to employ methods that would soften the Doctor's character and return them to the more lovable, more childlike innocence and charms. The first Doctor started out as very distrusting of humans, which is understandable, really, as the character was on the run from his own kind and lost in a strange new world. This harshness was softened through the qualities of his granddaughter, Susan, who persuaded him to see the best in his human stowaways, Ian and Barbara. Over the course of his time, Hartnell's character went from being rather a cantankerous, even aggressive Doctor, showing the violent side of himself in both the first serial and in the Reign of Terror, to more of a loving grandfatherly figure. In the case of the third and sixth Doctor, the character was softened gradually as they became more caring and concerning about their companions, Jo and Perry, respectively. The ninth Doctor was the gnarled survivor of the Time War, so returned to much more of a tough and authoritative presence. Eccleston really pulled off this hard northern persona, but worked slightly less effectively when showing the more kooky side of the Doctor's character. And I would put, so if I was going to rank these in any way of who is the most authoritative adult, I would put, right, now this is tricky. I think, yeah, the War Doctor is much less eccentric, so he would go over here. Of course, the sixth Doctor has a lot of eccentricity. So, so does he move over here a bit more? And he's a bit more of an inquisitive child. Oh, it's tricky. It's very tricky, this. So, yeah, I'll put them like this for now. I think that's probably about right. But they may well change as we go into this. So, introducing the second element, which is, of course, very important one in engaging the children in the audience, is that of the inquisitive child persona. This makes the Doctor instantly likable to children, of course. The idea of an adult character who's fun and full of youthful energy and love of life that they are. The advantages and disadvantages of stretching this element can be seen in the second Doctor and in the seventh Doctor, respectively. After the first Doctor was portrayed so well by William Hartnell, Patrick Troughton very wisely decided to take the character off in a new direction, which would include a more youthful and action-orientated approach. Even more wisely, perhaps, he decided to also retain certain elements that had made the first Doctor such an intriguing character, such as the huge intellect and ability to outthink his opponent at every turn. By combining the elements of both child and adult, the second Doctor created the skill of the fool's bluff. Whilst Hartnell's Doctor could command authority of a situation as soon as he walked in, Troughton's Doctor was the exact opposite, often being ignored and underestimated by his enemies. He could then use this to his advantage to fool his enemies into believing that he was idiotic and ridiculous, both by the way he presented himself as a cosmic hobo and the way in which he gave the impression that he didn't have a clue what was going on. The very clever technique then lulled the enemy into a false sense of security and allowed him time and space to plot their downfall. The second Doctor became very adept at utilizing this technique, using the element of inquisitive child as a smokescreen for the authoritative adult within, whilst also endearing him to both elements of the audience at the same time. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for the Seventh Doctor's portrayal, certainly in the first few serials. At this point in time, the series was already in dire straits. As I've discussed, the Sixth Doctor had been played very much as the authoritative adult to far too extreme a level, creating a Doctor who was distant from the audience. Sylvester McCoy was given the very difficult job of taking over from this and reaching the programme's young audience again. Understandably, he went from a much more childlike Doctor again, but pushed it perhaps too far. Basing himself on Charlie Chaplin, he created a Doctor who was laughable and ridiculous at first. As a result, serials like Time and the Rani and Paradise Towers are embarrassing and very difficult to watch. Realising his mistake, some fans might say a little bit too late, the series took a very different angle in the introduction of the troubled companion Ace. By bringing in a companion who the Doctor could support like a father figure, the balance of adult-child was restored and he became a much more lovable and inspiring character. Thirdly, there is the element of the eccentric alien, perfectly portrayed by possibly the most popular of all Doctor Who characterizations, Tom Baker. Tom found a way very early on of incorporating the authoritative elements of Hartnell with the childlike qualities of Troughton and weaving it into a weird but alien bohemian eccentricity that would endear him not only to the young and old demographic, but also to the student fraternity, a fairly new audience for the show at the time. He still had his moments of supreme intellect, but cleverly these were rarely directed at others. He would instead ramble monologues to himself that at once made him seem highly intelligent and just the right amount of odd to make him interesting. Again, as with the other two elements, the actor had to make sure that he didn't push the eccentricity too far and create a Doctor who's out of touch to the point where he can't interact. The Doctor needs to be apart from his surroundings or her surroundings, but also connected enough to engage with them. A further, more contentious element to the Doctor is that of the romantic hero or romantic human. This can be seen most in the portrayal of the Eighth Doctor for sure, perhaps the Fifth Doctor to a certain degree, the 10th Doctor for sure, definitely, and to a certain degree the 11th Doctor, as well as Jodie. These Doctors were young, dashing and brave, attracting many the affection of the fangirls and fanboys in the audience. The Fifth Doctor was admired mostly by extra female characters that came in, rather than his companions. The 8th and 10th Doctor, however, had romantic, if unfulfilled, connections with their companions for the first time. The 11th Doctor, Matt Smith, was again desired by his companions, but was much more awkward in his reaction to this sort of thing, drifting more into the inquisitive child realm. The approach of the dashing hero or heroine does have advantages. It makes the Doctor lovable, inspirational, and a heroic role model for their audience. However, when stretched too far, it can detract from the alien aloofness that the Doctor needs to make them fascinating as character. They can lose some of their eccentricity along the way, making them less mysterious. They become more of a conventional hero in this guise, which makes them stand out less from the other science fiction or drama serials around. The loco parentis that they had with the previous companions and the clear age difference, at least in years, is compromised when they become a sex symbol. So overall, it would appear that the perfect portrayal of the Doctor is measured by the amount that they balance the elements of adult, child, and eccentric, with the occasional hint of the romantic thrown in. This is no easy feat, especially as they need to be constantly changing and stretching in different directions to keep the character unique. The most popular Doctors, such as Tom Baker and David Tennant, have managed to create a character with great depth and dimensions. But all of the actors who've played the Doctor deserve a huge amount of respect for bringing such a complex role to life with such individual panache. So that is the end of the article that I wrote. But how do they fare within these four? And who is, in my opinion, the best or most rounded portrayal of the character of the Doctor? So starting off with Hartnell, of course, he is very much in the authoritative adult, but there are also times when he came across as the inquisitive child and the eccentric alien. There are even times when he flirted with romance, but very, very rarely, but mostly when he decided to make a cup of cocoa with an Aztec and ended up almost getting married to her as a result, as a faux pas, which is hilarious if you want to go back and watch the awesome Aztecs. He is. Let's put them all down here so I can move them around, because there's so many of these to organize. Let's just put them all over here for now, shall we? There we have it with the magic of editing. So moving along the axis rather than these boxes, I think that's pretty much how you're supposed to do it, isn't it? I've not done one of these before. The first Doctor is definitely up here in the authoritative adult, with a little bit of inquisitive child, eccentric alien, and the tiniest bit of romantic human. So he is a very, very good rounded Doctor, but more towards the authoritative adult strata here. Next up, we have Troughton, one of the best portrayals, in my opinion, for the Doctor. He was very much the authoritative adult, the inquisitive child, and the eccentric alien, but not the romantic human, I wouldn't say. So he would go around about here. Next is John Pertwee, much more the authoritative adult, little bit of an inquisitive child, little bit of an eccentric alien. I would put him around about here. The fourth Doctor is right in the middle, I would say, apart from the romantic human, perhaps. So definitely he's authoritative, he's inquisitive, and he is very eccentric. Maybe more eccentric than inquisitive, so maybe over here. Next up, much more of a young, dashing hero, and a lot less eccentric, I would say. Tried to be a little bit more authoritative, but didn't pull it off, I don't think, as well as perhaps these three. So I'm going to put him around about here. Then we have the sixth Doctor, very, very authoritative. Quite eccentric as well, but didn't really pull it off in the same way. I'd say he's probably the most authoritative, somewhere like that, I think. Troughton keeps moving around, doesn't he? Then the seventh Doctor was much more of the inquisitive child, becoming more authoritative as he went on. I would say he was around here. Eighth Doctor, much more the romantic hero, with a tiny bit of eccentric alien thrown in. War Doctor, he is going up here. I would say a lot less eccentric, a lot less inquisitive, and a lot less romantic. So yeah, he would go. He's probably on a par with Hartnell, actually, in some ways. This is all very confusing, isn't it? And the ninth Doctor, authoritative, a little bit of inquisitive child, a little bit eccentric, and a tiny bit romantic. So he would go around about here. Maybe next to the third Doctor, I think. Then we have Tennant. very romantic. I wouldn't say he was overly eccentric. That's one thing that I struggle with the 10th Doctor. When he tries to be eccentric, it comes across a bit goofy to me. I'm sorry, I can hear you sharpening your pitchforks already. He was quite an inquisitive child as well. I'm going to put him around about here, very close to Tennant's favourite, the 5th. So he'll be happy with that, no doubt. Then we have Matt Smith, very inquisitive, a little bit eccentric. Lost me a little bit with the authoritarian approach. I would put him around about the Troughton mark. Next up is Capaldi, very authoritative, a little bit eccentric, a tiny bit inquisitive, not particularly romantic. I would put him around about there. And Jo Martin being the same, although of course she's only had a couple of serials, so she's not had chance to stretch out the more eccentric alien. I would put her next to these three, I think. She is quite similar in character, I would say, to the War Doctor, perhaps a little bit more caring in her approach. And Jodie, I would say, one of the things I struggled with Jodie, great actress, but to me, she didn't convey this eccentric alien at all, and also struggled with the more authoritative scenes. So I would put her much more in the romantic human, inquisitive child approach over with the 5th Doctor. I would say perhaps even a little bit more in that road. So how to I mean, you can't rank them, can you? I mean, you can try. I think that's perhaps for another video, but this is perhaps where I would put them on the scale, with Troughton and the 7th Doctor and Matt Smith playing the part with that kind of fool's bluff idea of the Doctor. The 1st Doctor, War Doctor, Jo Martin, 3rd Doctor, and Christopher Eccleston playing the part as a much more authoritative adult. The Colin Baker and Peter Capaldi playing the character as much more of an authoritative adult approach, but with a tiny bit more eccentricity. The 8th, 10th, 5th, and 13th Doctor playing the much more human, and Tom Baker, I would say, right in the middle, apart from the romantic human. So yeah, very eccentric, authoritative, inquisitive child. I would say, even though my chart doesn't particularly say it very well, that the ultimate portrayal of the Doctor has to be the most rounded Doctor of them all, and often cited as people's favourites. It has to be Tom Baker. I hope all that made sense, and I hope at least that's got the conversation going about what you think makes the perfect portrayal of the Doctor, and how do we think that the newly announced Doctor Who actor, Doctor Who number 14, Ncuti Gatwa, is going to play the character. Are they going to go for the more eccentric alien, the more romantic human, the more authoritative adult, inquisitive child, or put a completely new spin on the character and surprise us once again? I'm fascinated to find out, and I'm also fascinated to find out what you think about the new announcement that has just been dropped as of today. Thank you so much for watching, and if you'd like to see more Doctor Who related content in the future, then please let me know in the comments below. Consider liking, subscribing, or even sharing this video with a friend. And as always, take care and thanks for watching.